Hey everyone, it's MK. Welcome back to MK Quilts and this quick video for my tip of the week. So earlier this week, or it might have been last week, I was posting about a quilt that I was working on, and it was this cute little cat border that I was using. And I was posting about the fact that I took some extra time in simulation to crop off some of these lines at the end of the pattern that were kind of floating off into like Never Never Land. And down here you'll see that this is the pattern where I've done that cropping. So this week's tip is about the crop, start, and end function. Now, if you've never used crop, start, and end, what the function stands for is you are able to crop anything that is ahead of your start circle. Here's my start circle currently. And you're able to crop away anything that's after your end circle. Here's my end circle right here. So if I wanted to crop away this tail, I would have to move the start circle. So let's do that in this example. Let's go to Pro Stitcher, New Start and End. And I'm just going to come down here on the arrow at the bottom of the slide bar and just go ahead and watch that start circle move as I click the down arrow. So basically I'm just trying to get that start circle to a spot that's a little bit more hidden. And then I'm going to go back to Modify Crop. I'm going to do my start and end crop, and anything that's ahead of the start circle, which now the start circle has been moved, if I depress that, that little tail goes away. All right, let's go ahead and baseline so we don't lose that. Let's do the exact same thing with the stop circle. Okay, Pro Stitcher, New Start and End. This time we're going to move the stop circle, but we have to move it backwards. Okay, so again, you're watching it move as I'm just clicking the little arrow. Once I get it where I want it to be, modify crop, start and end, and there we have it. Baseline, and that's how I got it cleaned up. Now I like to do those steps in simulation so that I don't forget to do them at the quilt. All right, so that was the border that I was demonstrating in the post that I did. But I want to show you a couple of other things that you can do with this crop feature to create for yourself new patterns from existing designs that you might have. So let's go ahead and clear the screen. And I just want to show you, let me open up a workspace that I had prepared for you. I just want to show you kind of where I'm going with this next really quick tip. So on the screen, you're just looking at some things that I worked on, starting with a very simple border design. So I took this border design, I did some repeating of it in a normal fashion. So if you look over here on this layout that I did, here is that little border, and it's just repeated like you might normally repeat a border. In the sashing, these vertical sashings, I did the crop start and end feature where I did my repeating. Once I got it repeated, I went back and cut it off so that I could have it be the exact size to fit my sashing, okay? Just like I showed you in the cat border example. All right, so the next thing that I want to show you really quickly is how you can take this one little design and create a new design from it. And after you create your design, you might want to use that as some sort of a block frame. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just clear the screen. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up that little design, and it's from a set by Christy Dillon, and here's the name of it. And I think that might be just pronounced Kaylee. Okay, so first things first, let's just go ahead and repeat this design on the screen, and we're just going to go ahead and do that manually tonight. Okay, so let's go to repeat. Let's just repeat it a couple of times, make sure we're on point to point, and then go ahead and baseline. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing. I kind of want to crop away this little part of the line here. Pro Stitcher, New Start and End. We'll move that dot forward until it's a little bit buried inside of the design, and then we'll modify crop, start and end. And let's go ahead and baseline. Okay, now the next thing is we're going to do a little bit of fun cropping to create a new design. So you'll notice that this actual pattern was 2 repeats of this little feather spiral kind of a thing. But what if we wanted the design to end after 3 of the little swirl designs? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this pattern off right about there. Okay, so I'm going to take my simulator, and when you're working in simulation, if you want to move your crosshairs, click on Sim, click, hold, and drag with your mouse, and all I'm doing is I'm going to kind of come in here, pick a spot where I want to crop this off, and do Pro Stitcher, New Start and End. I'm going to stop auto on, stop auto off. That brings the circle to my crosshairs, and then I'll go back and I'll crop it off. All right, now what I'm going to do is I think my crosshairs moved just slightly when I did that cropping. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a tip to get yourself precisely positioned over that red dot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a modify swap my start and end point. Okay, so that moved the green dot over here. Then I'm going to go up and I'm going to run my Pro Stitcher into position right smack dab on top of that dot. Okay, it's just a very much more accurate way to get yourself into position rather than trying to drag your crosshairs and get it into position. Okay, the reason why it's so important for that to be in position, I'm just going to go ahead and swap it back. Modify, swap it back. The reason why it's important for that to be precisely in position is because I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of this pattern now. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate. Let me just refresh so you can see, and let me just take this and I'm just going to drag it a little bit so that you can see. What I'm going to do is take this duplicate and I'm going to rotate it. I'm just going to mirror it, and on this pattern, again, I'm going to swap those start and end points, and now my machine, or rather my simulator, is in position. I have my duplicate open, and all I'm going to do now is do a modify, reposition, reposition on start point. Let me just refresh so that you can see. I'm also going to move my crosshairs out of the way and deselect everything so that you can see that we now have the left-hand side and we have the right-hand side. But what we really want to do is we want to select them using the multiple select tool one at a time. I'm going to select this one first, and I'm going to select this one second. And do you see that when I did that, it made this little black dot in the center? That looks very familiar to what a point-to-point pattern looks like when we do pantos or maybe border designs, right? Okay, we've got them both selected. Our little black dot is about to disappear when we hit baseline. And now we have taken our one little sashing design, we've repeated it a couple of times, we've cleaned up the edge that we didn't want hanging out to nowhere, and we've done some custom cropping, some duplication, some positioning in the middle, and in the process, we've made ourselves an entirely new design. So that's just a really quick tip, you guys. I go through a lot more in-depth instruction on crop, start, and end in my online video series, but this is just one little way that you can experiment with some patterns that you may have in your collection and do some repeating, do some custom cropping, some duplication, and you can come up with a bunch of things that you're creating that you might want to use on one of your quilts. So again, let me just open up that workspace so that you can see that there is the design that I just created for you, and I used it as a frame and put another block on the inside of it. Over here on this quilt layout that I did really quickly, I used that design that I had created and I used it as a border. Now, it's very important to understand that in this particular situation, this pattern that I created ends up to not be a point-to-point pattern. Okay, so even though I used it in the border, I used it here and I repeated it and repeated it. which means when I stitch this, I'm going to have jumps in between that. But sometimes, you know, what you're creating, you like it enough to deal with jumps, right? Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. I hope that was enough to give you some ideas, something to chew on. Go to your own patterns, see what you've got, see if you can do some repeating, some duplicating, some repositioning, connect it all together, and see if you can make yourself some really cool new patterns. All right, you guys, that's tip of the week. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, from my studio to yours, happy quilting. Bye bye.